Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my Capcom Spotlight June 2025 impressions. Yeah, God, they're naming all this kind of weird shit. Ugh, that's a kind of easier one. That's kind of how I'm talking about it from IGN. Alright, so, this focused on Pragmata, Street Fighter 6, Resident Evil Requiem, and Monster Hunter Wilds. Let's see here. I'm going to hit the stuff that is kind of least important, at least to me first, and then kind of go onto what I kind of watched. So we got Saga coming to Street Fighter 6 on August 5th. Let's see. And also, the Fighting Pass will be available starting July 4th. Stickers, avatar gear, X colors, challenge screen illustrations, and more. Let's see. There's also stuff about, like, swimsuits. Yeah. Summer swimwear for Cammy, Luke, Chun-Li, Manon, Jamie, Kimberly, and AKI. Okay, Monster Hunter Wilds. I have heard weirdness of that, so we'll see how this kind of goes up. They sent a roadmap schedule, additional content, underwater fights. That sounds kind of cool. Quality of life updates, and a collaboration with Fender Guitars. Okay. Free Title Update 2 launches on Monday, June 30th. We'll have much of what was in the presentation. The Festival of Accord Flame Fetty seasonal event will then follow from July 23rd to August 6th, with Arch-Tempered Uth Duna arriving July 30th through August 20th. Man, this sounds live servicey. Also going to be a Free Title Update 3, for example, launched in September. Kunitsu Gami, Path of the Goddess, celebrates its first anniversary with special content for fans in July. Glad that that's doing well and is a new kind of franchise for them to kind of go on for. Let's see. Can partake in the festivities involves a Mazao talisman called Yashichi Waves, which alters the music with a nostalgic filter that gives it an 8-bit style. That's actually kind of awesome. New and existing players will use it starting next month. It's launched on PC, PS4 and 5, 1, X, and S. Also be made available on the Switch 2. So yeah. Okay, that seems to be most of that kind of stuff. Now, let's see. I'm going to hit on Pragmata. They kind of... It didn't go too much. Like, they put little sectioned out videos that I decided to look into versus what, like, watching the whole stream. Pragmata looked really kind of interesting because I liked seeing how the kind of combat mechanics go. So, we're working with the pair of, let's see, it's Hugh and Diana, right? Yes. And they showed more kind of how the gameplay kind of works, and it definitely gave off a nice kind of Dead Spacey Resident Evil 4 kind of feel, where you use Diana to use her kind of hacking powers, and you actually do have to kind of do 2 games at once. We'll have to see how this kind of works out in practice. If they're able to actually hit a nice sweet spot of doing this kind of hacking minigame to release the armor, that's another kind of aspect where in Dead Space you have to cut off the limbs. Here, you're degrading the armor so that way you can shoot and destroy these kind of robots and everything. So you do this kind of hacking minigame, get as many blue kind of things to the end kind of point as possible in this kind of grid kind of scenario, and then their armor kind of blasts off. Well, not completely blasts off, but gets into a kind of critical state, and Hugh's able to then do his kind of ability, well, not ability, just shoots at them and kind of fucks them up. We're also going to have other kind of ones where better kind of weaponries. We saw kind of a pistol kind of action, a kind of shotgun-ish kind of one that he had, as Diana is helping him kind of like move around and do everything kind of on there. We still got basic kind of primers on the overall kind of lore, losing contact with the base, investigating to see what's kind of going on, but not a lot for it, other than it's going to be coming like in 2026. But this just kind of cemented it for me, giving me kind of more of an understanding of how the kind of combat kind of works, which is an important kind of aspect. I wish there was a little bit more, but they're probably waiting until they're in a kind of better state where they're like, yeah, this is pretty much definitely ready for 2026, which I don't mind if there's a delay. I mean, it looks pretty good so far with what they're showing off, but not in all cases are delayed games better, but because you don't have that instance of like they released it and then they had to pull it back and then polish it again. That's once you release it, you release it. I'd rather them take their time and make sure that it's good to what they're kind of showing off, but I'm interested in it. I'm like, okay, she's kind of like daughter kind of sister kind of vibe, helps you out in combat, and we'll see how that kind of goes in this whole kind of story and the relationship between them. It's definitely gotta like nail that relationship to where she's not like annoying because she's got gameplay combat mechanics in there, or just kind of a weird kind of one where you're like, okay, I've got this weird fucking kid strapped to my back, what the fuck, kind of scenario. I'm not getting those vibes, but I mean, they are marketing materials. Who knows what happens when you're getting into the game state and what they consider the finished kind of product. I'm just like, all right, we'll see about this. Other one was Resident Evil Requiem. It's like, all right, let's see what's kind of going on here. And they kind of sat down and explained what was kind of going on. We got that we can do third and first person. I like that. Give your audience the choice of what goes on. If they like the first person, go to the first person. I'm probably going to pick the third person because that's what I've mainly played Resident Evil games as, and that's what I'm usually more kind of comfortable with. Not that I hate first person. I like first person shooters and everything like that. It just, I like being able to have the third person kind of going on there. Let's see. But it really was interesting for them to talk about kind of all this stuff that was kind of going on, that they were potentially thinking of Leon S. Kennedy as their protagonist. However, it has gotten to the point where they're like, okay, he's not going to be scared of shit. Or if we do make him scared of shit, it ain't going to make much sense. He's not going to jump in a bucket. So that's kind of why they went with a newer protagonist that could be scared, because horror was their objective. And I'm like, I respect that. And I like that and I understand that. Because otherwise you'd have to make it more of an action kind of game. And if that's not your objective, okay. They also were planning on fiddling around with like open world or online. And instead went more of the focused kind of route. And I respect that. I don't mind other kind of ones. I think that they should keep to the main ones being horror and then having kind of quote-unquote side ones. Kind of similar to Atlas with their Shin Megami Tensei Persona, now Metaphor, where they have different kind of pillars where they kind of explore certain kind of aspects that are a little bit different, but yet can still tie into certain kind of gameplay elements and design kind of philosophies that they work with. So you get your action where Leon and Chris and the old guard get to like fuck some shit up. Even though their main objective is to celebrate 30 years as this game is coming out as a 30th year kind of capstone and finish off some stories. So hopefully we do get that, and I'm looking forward to that. So we'll see what's kind of going on with that. Let me see here. And of course that's kind of why they're bringing it back to Raccoon City. That they've done a lot of things to make... Let's see. That their kind of objective here, and that Grace is supposed to be like a relatable protagonist, and the vulnerability, how she can become erratic, but yet she's like looking and puzzling through kind of things. It's really kind of cool. Let's see. An addictive fear is their kind of thing where you kind of get through and return to a strong focus on horror. It's like, okay, that sounds good. And that Grace is supposed to have a low tolerance, but kind of grow through and get through the horrors and courage. And gain that kind of courage. That's important. That's always the issue of attempting to utilize the same protagonist from a horror perspective. That's why you usually see the kind of shift to the action, because they survived it. They're now, if not an expert, they've handled this kind of shit before. That's why you see what happens with Ellen Ripley in the Alien franchise. She beat one xenomorph before, and then we shifted to an action more kind of movie with horror kind of elements, where the other people are like, oh fucking shit, and she's like, I fucking told you, and then had to deal with the shit like that. We also see it in Dead Space as well. Funny enough, I'm talking about that. Isaac being the mute protagonist until we got the remake, which gave him his voice, and then we see him kind of more action-wise in the second one. He still had to deal with fucked up kind of shit, but you kind of see that. I understand why you would want to shift that if you want more of the horror experience, and what issues have occurred throughout Resident Evil in that time, and why it amps up to action stuff if you're using the same kind of protagonist. But the thing is, you have to use those protagonists if you want to kind of finish out their story and narrative. So it'll be interesting going back to Raccoon City and seeing what kind of goes on, what we learn, what Grace learns, who will also be involved in this, and how their design philosophy kind of works out. Yeah. Like, I was fine with Resident Evil 7 and 8, and I'm interested to see what they kind of go on with this, how we explore the mythology, what kind of goes on, and what they've been, like, building and amping up with the remakes as well, with the overall flow of the story. So we'll see how this goes. This gave me good vibes. I liked understanding and seeing what's kind of going on with the people who are involved with the game and what their thought processes are. And most of the stuff they said here, I'm like, okay, it's cool that you explore different kind of avenues, and then this is why you set on this. Leon thing totally made sense. So hopefully we'll now, since both of my main ones that I'm really looking forward to, Pragmata and Resident Evil Requiem, are coming out in 2026, we'll probably see other kind of ones and get more kind of elements. I understand that this was kind of more of the kind of primer to understand combat for Pragmata and what their design philosophy and objectives were for Requiem. So if you're thinking, okay, we're going to get something here, we didn't really get much. And if you're disappointed, I totally get and acknowledge that. I'm just hopefully waiting for that they tried to balance as much as possible and didn't do stupid fucking marketing of like, this is, quote unquote, gameplay. Just get to a technical state where you can actually show up what gameplay you can do. That's what I'll be intrigued to see with Requiem. I think that they have that pretty much down. I mean, most of the stuff that I played remake-wise with third person works pretty well, and the first person stuff works well in 7 and 8. So I think those will be pretty much locked, so there won't be really these kind of issues there. But like, what new kind of maybe mechanics are introduced, how the puzzling kind of works out, those kind of things are what I'm looking into to see. I want to, it's mainly the narrative and the understanding of what they're attempting to do here, learning more about Grace, how she will fit into the overall Resident Evil mythos, and what her kind of story will do to kind of change and figure out the narrative and where we're kind of going maybe forward, and how we're finishing off some other kind of ones. I don't think we'll get a complete conclusion on like Chris, Jill, Barry, Sheva, Rebecca, any of those here. I would like them to actually probably create a game that is dedicated to that, if it's considered a spin-off or like a kind of capstone kind of one. It'd be really kind of hard to do that as a horror one. It would be more kind of like a action horror one, kind of like what I was talking about before. But if they don't want that to be the main Resident Evil game, they still need to do that to finish it out. But we'll see kind of what happens. So those are my impressions on Capcom Spotlight. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.